Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I understand that tonight's questions are going to really range all over the map, so let's get going with the first question.
Dr. Brandon, if young children can turn off the world as a natural defense mechanism to traumatic experience or continual abusive treatment, to what extent can they or should they be held responsible for later improper and even criminal actions, keeping in mind that perhaps less volitional judgment than learned response to a hostile world has been exercised?
Well, to begin with, the fact that a person is subject to certain traumas doesn't mean that his ability to think is automatically nullified or wiped out, or that he is no longer able to make moral judgments, or that he is no longer able to project the consequences of his behavior. I think that there is a great tendency to overestimate the degree to which psychological traumas destroy a person's ability to think or to see clearly. One reason why I say that is because of discoveries that have emerged in especially the last year and a half in the course of doing therapy with certain techniques that I've been employing, and which dramatize in rather fascinating and interesting ways the extent to which people know what they are doing even when they do not know that they know what they are doing. That there is a great deal of subconscious calculation going on and a great deal of awareness going on, and that playing helpless and playing dumb is one of man's favorite games. So without denying the importance and even the tragedy of childhood traumas, don't draw from that the inference that if a person had a rough time in childhood, why then he loses the ability to know that he perhaps shouldn't murder somebody for the sake of taking his wallet. Now, I don't mean to suggest that there are no circumstances under which judgment can be impaired. What I am suggesting is that those circumstances, if they do occur, are the exception, and one has to have very good, very, very specific reason for thinking that such impairment is taking place in this case. To proceed from the general observation of childhood trauma simply is not scientifically supportable, and there's a great deal of evidence to undercut or conflict with so completely deterministic an assumption that the individual is caught in a situation that he cannot in any sense modify by thinking, and that his thinking cannot in any sense guide him in the same direction in the conduct of his life. That assumption isn't true.
Is there any evidence which indicates that sex with a number of different individuals after marriage is psychologically harmful?
I doubt it. I doubt it very much. You know, there's very little hard evidence on the whole subject of the consists of people's sexual behavior. I know a great many people who have all sorts of opinions on the subject. Sex is a subject upon which people are A, appallingly ignorant, and B, great many of them consider themselves experts. It's interesting how often those two traits seem to go together. So far as this issue goes, some studies have been done, and the fact that married people have affairs, often with deceit, and the elements involved of conflict and unhappiness and deceit often do lead, of course, to harmful consequences for the people involved. However, there are other instances in which couples have argued rather vigorously that some extramarital experience or experiences was very growth-inducing and was, in that sense, beneficial for the marriage, and there is certainly no prima facie reason to outlaw this as inconceivable. I think that it's extremely important that people take a very conservative approach to, I don't mean conservative in the ordinary sense, but in almost the opposite of the ordinary sense, conservative in realizing how little is actually known in contrast to how much is believed on this subject. I think that if a person is on the premise of having a great many extramarital adventures, it makes one wonder why he chose to involve himself in a marital context. So many factors are involved there. There is so much that has to be known. I don't want to reopen the whole issue of extramarital adventures in general, which I've discussed so many times before, I want to confine myself to responding directly to your question in terms of, is there hard evidence of harmful consequences? I would say there is evidence of harmful consequences, and in some cases there is evidence that some, I won't say a great many, some extramarital experiences were beneficial for a marriage. So it's an open question about which a great deal still needs to be learned, and I think the first and most sane thing to appreciate on this subject is how little any of us know about it.
Your use of the terms masculine and feminine seemed to change from your first romantic love lectures to the recorded version. Did you change your definitions? How would you now define these terms?
Yes, there was a great jump between the original course I gave on the psychology of romantic love and the subsequent course of lectures from which the recording was made. My thinking was evolving and developing across those years and still continues to do so. I don't remember exactly how I defined those terms the very first time I used them. Today, I'm almost tempted to say, don't take me perhaps literally, but get rather the spirit of my remark, I'm almost tempted to say, I wish to hell those terms had never been invented, because so far they're causing more confusion to people than anything else. People are full of so many hang-ups, misapprehensions, and confusions on the subject of what is masculinity and what is femininity. You know, in a non-technical sense, probably on a purely common sense level, the simplest of what I think on that subject is in the last chapter of Breaking Free, where the whole subject of masculinity and femininity is explored in rather simple and basic experiential terms. You see, to me, as I understand those terms, in a psychological context, if a man enjoys woman, if he feels comfortable sexually relative to woman, if he is able to enjoy his own functioning relative to woman, if he enjoys being a man in the context of there being women in the universe, then I say he's masculine. And if a woman, changing all the genders of what I just said, is able to enjoy her role as a woman sexually, is able to enjoy man, feels comfortable in a sexual relationship with a man, is accepting of the sexual relationship, is able to enjoy it, is able to accept and enjoy her own physical person as a female, then I say she's feminine. So in essence, I believe that it does crucially involve this acceptance of one's own body, of one's own sexual method of functioning, and one's ability to enjoy the fact of being a male or female in the context of one's relationship to the opposite sex. That's the simplest and best way I can characterize what I mean, and I hope that answers your question.
Assuming that you agree that there is a basic difference between the sex drives of men and women, can you account for this?
I don't agree. I'm not aware of any evidence, of any hard evidence, to support the claim that there is a basic difference between the sex drives of men and women. Now, there might well prove to be one day. Now, for a long time, a lot of people had thought there were. On the other hand, speaking as a marriage counselor, I hear much more about the problem of women whose sex drives, quote-unquote, are far in excess of their husbands, so it is now seeming. The point I'm trying to make is that for so many centuries, women have been propagandized to believe that there is something sinful about the woman enjoying sex. A woman is taught to be desexed from age 1, that what she may exhibit culturally today is not necessarily proof of her nature biologically as a woman. So I, on the basis of my present reading and understanding, would say I am not aware, and I deny the existence of evidence to support the assertion that there is a difference between the sex drives of men and women. That being the case, of course, I won't attempt to account for a difference whose existence I'm questioning.